Hello everybody, I'm back here with another video, and this time it will be something pretty similar to other videos on my channel, except it'll be a tier list on Canadian Prime Ministers rather than US Vice President picks or US Presidents. So the way this works is a typical tier system, S, A, B, C, D, F, and there hasn't been many Prime Ministers in Canadian history, but I'll try to rank them. And yeah, without further ado, let's begin. So I'll just be doing this in random order so that there's no sort of bias. And by the way, I don't have any bias necessarily, except from what I know about these people. So I'll try to stay as impartial as possible. So right away, I'll start off with Joe Clark. I think Joe Clark had the potential to be a lot better than he was. Frankly, he didn't have much of an impact. I think he's just sort of like an average prime minister. He lost to Pierre Trudeau after he came back, which is kind of embarrassing. But overall, he didn't really do much. He didn't destroy the country either, so I guess we can give him points for that. Then we got, actually, I'll do her later because she was also relevant. We got, what could we do next? Paul Martin. So Paul Martin is not really a prime minister that is thought of as being really consequential because he sort of just ran the country, and that's pretty much all he did. He didn't really do anything crazy, but he did lead a pretty stable country at the time, but he didn't really last long. So I think he definitely loses points for that. I think he's sort of in the same category as Joe Clark. He did last a bit longer, but there was a lot of infighting within the Liberals, and he didn't really have much of an impact other than just being there as a stabilizer, prime minister sort of thing. Next up, I think I'll do Charles Tupper. Why not? I think Charles Tupper is one of those prime ministers where honestly, if you didn't even hear his name, you wouldn't even know who he is. He's just that boring, filler prime minister. Wasn't even supposed to be there in the first place. Nothing to do. He had nothing important that he did. He wasn't really a great politician. Kind of a garbage prime minister, F tier. Not much else to say about him. Then we got our friend William Lyon Mackenzie King, longest serving prime minister in history. And that's been, what, I think it was 23 years almost. I'm going to put him at B tier. And the reason why I put him at B tier is although he sort of did separate Canada in the sense that he separated us from the British and made us more independent, he stayed for 23 years, which is not a good thing. That's setting a very bad precedent. He was there for way too long, and I mean, again, Canadian prime ministers don't have a term limit, but 23 years is just ridiculous. He was there for a very long time, and I mean, overall, when you think of prime ministers, you just think of him because he was there for a long time. He did do some good things. There was World War II and whatnot, but I just don't see him as being an S tier or an A tier for that matter. Next up, um, I got, who's this? John Thompson, I believe. Again, another one of those filler prime ministers. He was there early on in the country, didn't really do much. 2 years, in and out, boring, not much to say about him. He was there sort of during the founding, but other than that, there's not much else to say about this guy. Um, then we got Mackenzie Bowell. Again, another dude, didn't have much of an impact. Put him at D tier because he wasn't necessarily terrible, but again, he didn't really have much of an impact. And the way I grade this is based on impact. Impact number one, that's a big deal. Number two, did you run the country well? And number three, were you consequential? Did you do good things? So I just think in terms of that, he's definitely a D tier. Nothing really special about him. What do we got next? I'll go with Jean Chrétien. Jean Chrétien, a lot of people want to put him high, but I think I'll just put him in a C tier. Not a really moving prime minister. Didn't really do much. He was sort of like a Paul Martin. I mean, they didn't really get along, but he didn't really do much. He was sort of just that guy that ran the country. He did have some surpluses, so I'll give him credit for that. But other than that, I mean, he didn't really do anything crazy, and he did refuse the U.S.'s demands, or rather, we'll say calls to action to join them in Iraq. So I guess I'll give him that. But at the same token, this guy doesn't have much of a legacy except the fact that the country ran well. That's it. But it wasn't like, oh yeah, the country became absolutely incredible or moved in the right direction after he left office. Like, no, it wasn't anything like that. He wasn't really consequential. So I'll put him at C tier. Where again, C tier is not bad, but you're just like mediocre, middle of the pack. Not much going on. Not much of a legacy. Whatever. Um. So then we got first S tier right away. Sir John A. Macdonald gets hated on a lot. People think that he's the reason why residential schools happened, which is true. That is true. His legacy is tainted by that pretty bad mistake that he made. Probably the biggest mistake he's ever made. Probably the biggest mistake Canada's ever made. But we can't discredit the fact that this guy is essentially our George Washington. You know, he helped write the Constitution. He was there in the beginning, second longest serving prime minister in history, I believe, right behind Mackenzie King. And he helped connect the country in the sense that he was the one who had the whole railroad built. He led that initiative. The country was very strong when he helped found it, and he was just a very good leader for that role of sort of creating a nation that could stand on its own 2 feet. And so I think right away that just puts him in an S tier on its own. But his governing was actually pretty decent if you think about it. And overall, his economic policy was also pretty good in comparison to what we have nowadays, which I will get to Justin Trudeau eventually. I know a lot of people want to see that. But I'll rank him near the end just to make it a bit more interesting. I'll go with Robert Borden. Robert Borden, I'm not a fan of. And the reason why I'm not a fan of, and I'll also put him at D tier, by the way. I'm not a fan of his because I understand the whole conscription thing. I get that. Canadians were happy to fight. Whatever. World War One, I get his involvement. Do I think we should have been as involved as we were? Not really. And he was sort of a coward. I mean, Canada, I'll just give one example. Canada had a chance to annex Turks and Caicos, okay, which is an island in the Caribbean region, I believe. And it would have been a great opportunity. We could have had overseas territory, and he refused. He refused to do it, and that's something that I still wonder to this day. I mean, we could have had Turks and Caicos as an overseas island. I'm just thinking that a bit selfishly, but at the same token, what the hell is he thinking not annexing Turks and Caicos when he had the opportunity when they wanted to join the Union? Or I should call it the Dominion of Canada. So I think that's something that honestly is pretty pathetic about him. And I just think in terms of governing, he was a very boring guy. Like, he's just an old man who ran the country. He was part of like that elitist group of people, which again was sort of Canadian politics for most of its early times. But I think it's fair to say that he wasn't really an important prime minister, and I just don't understand how anyone could really put him any higher than a D. He's kind of a garbage prime minister in my view. Then we get Arthur Meighen, again another guy who just there's not much to say about him. He wasn't really that special, and he was there twice. I will give him that, but he was only there for like 1 year both times, so he didn't really do much. So he doesn't really have much of a legacy. And he was also part of like that elite class, sort of old school conservative, you know, connections and all that stuff. Again, what did he do? Nothing. I can't really name you a single thing that he did. Pretty useless guy, D tier, boring. Nobody remembers him when you think of Canadian prime ministers. Then we got Lester B. Pearson, who I will actually put at A tier. I put Lester B. Pearson at A tier, and I'm not saying this because I'm Canadian. I'm just gonna say this in terms of consequentiality. I don't necessarily agree with it, but he did end up creating universal health care. I don't really agree with the way that's run nowadays, but it was a great concept at the time, and it made sense. He created the new flag. He was very consequential and important during the Cold War as a strategic ally of the United States against the Soviet Union, which is a big deal. And I really respect his policies in that regard, and I also think that there's a reason why the Toronto airport is named after him. He's a pretty important guy. So I think A tier is pretty fair, and I don't think we'll be seeing much other A tiers, but he's definitely one of them. Next up, we will do Kim Campbell. Uh, really not much to say about her. Pretty garbage. Was there for literally, I think, a few months, honestly. You know what? I'm gonna put her at F. Honestly, she didn't really do anything. Didn't help the Conservatives at all. And I mean, they ended up losing the election. She was the leader and the prime minister, so pretty pathetic. Not much to say. Straight to F tier. There's some older ones here as well. We will go with Alexander Mackenzie. This guy's a racist. He's a terrible guy. He did pass the Indian Act. It was under him that it was passed. Essentially stripped Indigenous people of their rights and created the residential school system under his watch. I don't understand the argument that I get why some people say that he was a good prime minister, but he's a total racist. So I don't know why anyone would put him any higher. Um, he was also the first liberal prime minister. If you want to take it at that, I can understand D tier, but just based on what he passed and what kind of situation we're in now with reconciliation and whatnot, this is all caused by him and that stupid passing. So I can't put him any higher than F tier in my view. But if you have any other disagreements, just let me know down in the comments below. I'll do Wilfrid Laurier. I think Wilfrid Laurier is a decent prime minister. I just think for his time, it made sense to have someone strong. He's also there for what, 15 years almost? 15 years. He was there for a long time. He's very well known, very well recognized. I think it's fair to put him at B tier. I would put him a bit higher than Mackenzie King. I think he's better than him. But at the end of the day, he was there, 8 years less, and I think he was, in my view, he was more consequential, more important than him. We got John Turner. The guy didn't really have much of a chance. He's going straight to F tier. He didn't really have much of a chance. He wasn't there for a long time. He's only there after Trudeau Sr. ended up resigning. And, he got his thing. He got his wish, which was to come back to office. But at what cost? This guy really did not have a great time as prime minister. And he's not really well known as a prime minister, or as this when he was prime minister. He's not really known for that. So I can't say that he's necessarily someone that is accomplished as a prime minister. I think he's slightly better than Kim Campbell, just because he was actually succeeded by a liberal. But there's not much else to say about his prime ministership. I think this is John Abbott, I believe. I don't really know much about John Abbott except for the fact that, yet again, he's one of those filler prime ministers. Not much to say about him. Old school conservative, early Dominion establishment kind of guy. Just sort of like a transition prime minister. 1 year, didn't do much at all, and didn't have any influence other than the fact that he's just going to be known as a prime minister. And that's it. That's pretty much it. I'm trying to figure out who this is. This is Saint Laurent, right? I can't tell. No, yeah, this is R.B. Bennett. R.B. Bennett was a very smart guy. And I think if he hadn't been a prime minister, he'd definitely be A tier based on accomplishments. But I just think as a prime minister, he wasn't really as successful as he should have been. I will put him at C tier. I think he did a good job, or at least tried to do a good job during the Great Depression, which Canada was hit hard by because we're literally interconnected to the United States in nearly every sense. But I don't think there's a reason why he only lasted 5 years, and there's a reason why he was succeeded by Lion Mackenzie King, who stayed there for what 13 years afterwards. So I just if he had if he had run the country the way he had run other things that he had done in his life, he would probably be an A tier. But he was put in a very difficult position, and he didn't really live up to the expectations that people had of him, or at least some people perceived that he would have. I think this is Louis Saint Laurent. I believe so. Again, another strategic partner for the United States during the Cold War. I'm gonna put him at D tier though. Again, he was there for what, 9 years? Pretty long time. Another liberal, but he just didn't have that long-lasting impact, which is what I'm looking for. Did he destroy the country? Not really. The country was doing decent, but he didn't really help it that much. Now we're getting to Diefenbaker. I actually like Diefenbaker. I'm putting him at A tier. This guy was very good in terms of Cold War expertise and Cold War support for the United States. He was one of those guys that he was actually conservative too, by the way. Many people don't know that. You'd think that he was a PC, progressive conservative, but he was pretty good. He was a good prime minister. He did a lot of things for the country that were good. He also tried to help the indigenous population in Canada, and in many ways, he was a very progressive guy for his time, especially considering the fact that Canada was still a rather, we'll call it, a rather non-progressive country at the time, which is pretty opposite from what it is now, which I will get to Trudeau, by the way. But let's go to Mulroney. Mulroney's an A tier. I think he's a great prime minister. I think he's one of the best. The free trade agreements, his relation with Reagan, acid rain, shutting that down. This guy did a lot of things for Canada. Now, mind you, he did spend a lot. That's why I can't put him in S tier. The economy wasn't great. I would put him in S tier if the economy was great, but it wasn't. So that does sort of bring him down. But I think in terms of impact, he's definitely an A tier. Very good prime minister. Harper, I want to put Harper at an A. I just can't. The country was running well. It was fine. The country was just stable. Economy was doing well. He did a decent job handling the recession. But he ended up losing to our friend Justin Trudeau, who I will get to in a second, by the way. But first, I'll go to his father. I think his father is a D tier. I don't like Pierre Elliott Trudeau. I think we give him some credit, Charter Rights and Freedoms, and immigration. He did some things on that front. He is someone that is quite polarizing in many respects. He did actually contribute a lot to the polarization of Canada, at least politically speaking, I would say. And he did end up losing and then coming back, so there's that as well. But I just think overall, if you compare him to his son, he's definitely much better. This guy is going straight to an F. This guy has single-handedly destroyed the country in every respect possible. He has surrounded himself with incompetent people. He has disregarded every single major complaint or every single piece of feedback. Frankly, I believe he's a narcissist. He wants to cling on to power, and there's a reason why he's getting absolutely obliterated in the polls. I think, in my view, if you're to rank the F tiers, this guy is number one in the list. Justin Trudeau is single-handedly the worst prime minister in Canadian history, and it's not even close. He has single handedly ruined the country. He legalized marijuana, which didn't last that long. I can go on and on with the scandals. He had ArriveCan, he had We Charity, he had SNC Lavalin, he had the all sorts of things. Honestly, he had so many things. This guy, the endless trips that he spent money on for no reason. Blackface. This guy is terrible, and he's clinging on to power. It's gonna come to an end soon. Um, but just let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I think this one is a bit more balanced than my U.S. president's one, which is a lot of B tiers, a lot of C tiers. Weren't many Fs, but there were some. But this one, it's pretty clear that Canadian prime ministers aren't really that exceptional compared to U.S. presidents. So that's why there's a lot of F tiers and also some D tiers. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Drop a like, make sure to subscribe, and share this video with someone. I'll be sure to make a lot more videos that are related to tier lists or world leaders or whatever you guys want. Just drop a comment. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you in the next one.